Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. A very strange and busy Tuesday. We're going to dig straight into today's Q&A. This was with Misha. And Misha had some questions in regards to rolling, but mostly about how we would influence a middle propulsive representation in our rolling activity. So in some cases, we actually want to limit relative motions. And so if we're trying to teach somebody to produce higher levels of force, we're going to bias them towards middle propulsive activities. So these would be like your bilateral symmetrical activities. These are your higher force, higher load activities. But if we want to remain coherent with our programming, then we also may want to influence this through some of our rolling activities. And so we can do this just by manipulating the magnitude of load, where we're going to start to take away some of this relative motion intentionally in return for higher force. We could also look at this from the perspective that we can use these activities where we have somebody that is a high force producer, does lack relative motion. We may be able to increase their buffer zone of movement excursion that may protect them from their superpowers, as it were. When they become high force producers, we get a lot of reduction in that relative motion that may put pressures or tensions in isolated areas. And so we can use that to help avoid those situations as well. So again, very versatile. It's just a matter of understanding the needs and then understanding where we're putting people in regards to this position relative to middle propulsion. So I think many of you will find this useful because we tend to talk about the importance of magnifying relative motion, but there are situations where we want to take it away for force production, like I said, but we also need to protect people from themselves. So again, very useful. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com, and put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so we don't delete it. We'll arrange that at our mutual convenience. Everybody have an outstanding Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow.
I had a couple more questions on rolling activities.
My goodness.
So one variation that I saw you perform, I don't remember which video it was, but you had the hip and the shoulder at 90 degrees, and the person was rolling like as one unit. So basically they were rolling in middle propulsion.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that seems that you're just locking everything in and there is no point in rolling in that position.
There's no point?
Yeah, because everything is locked in, so you're not getting any relative motion.
Okay, what if I don't want relative motion?
Okay, that makes sense. So that's just teaching somebody how to move in middle propulsion.
Is there a point in time in a roll where I would want that middle P expressed?
Yes.
Yeah, probably so. So if I'm working, so think about.
But then why do you want them to move? So why not just hold the position, for example?
Again. Why what?
So why do you want them to move in that position? Why not just like hold it statically?
So if I am training someone and the foundation of their program is working in middle propulsive activities, I might need an activity that meets that coherence of the program, right? And so I'm trying to teach them to hold the middle propulsive representation, right? So if you did an arm bar, okay, with a very heavy kettlebell, do you think you're getting full relative motions?
Nope.
Then why would you ever use a heavy kettlebell for an arm bar? Because I want to teach you to hang on to a middle propulsive representation. So if I'm training force production, right, and I want you to be able to lead into a middle propulsive representation and come out of a middle propulsive representation, but I also want to produce high forces, I still need that representation. So it still is useful. It's like not the whole world is not dependent on you having relative motion. I still have situations where I need to train that middle propulsive representation. I need to capture the IR positions, and I need to teach you how to maintain that, right?
Okay.
So it just comes down to needs and then strategies. It's like, what am I trying to achieve?
Right. And then in that exercise, so if you're rolling with this 90-90 position, would there be still obviously a little bit of movement
There
in
has
the
to be,
sleep?
a little bit, otherwise you'd be stuck, right?
Right.
But the
And
idea
then,
is like, it's like, so if this is like the middle of middle propulsion and this is like my highest force and this is maximum IR and I go out here, that's more relative motion. It's just not full relative motion.
right.
Right.
So I was thinking for people maybe who are really stuck in middle propulsion, that exercise could be, as far as recapturing relative motion, you could potentially use that exercise to kind of take them out of the middle
Yeah,
propulsion.
so you start there. So we've talked about this when we talk about some of these people that are very, very compressed anterior to posterior. It's like they don't have any space. And so I can put them in their middle representation and I offset their feet just enough that I create a little bit of relative motion and I start moving them there. And then it starts to become a bigger motion, right? Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. And then, another question, if you're having, so a lot of these rolling activities, you're not going to have your foot on the wall, but potentially you could have one foot on, like if you're in sideline, and you've talked about this before, you can have one foot on the wall,
Yes, sir.
for example, the down leg, and then you're just using the right leg to move back and forth.
Yeah, like a stepping.
Yeah, like a stepping.
Through. Uh-huh.
Right. And
Absolutely.
in that situation, you would probably want to see the pelvis also kind of roll back and forth.
For sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yep. Yep. And that's the same thing that we're kind of talking about here. It's like, so by fixing that foot to the wall, you're kind of sticking them towards a middle representation. And then I move you back into a late representation and an early representation back and forth by doing the stepping activity.
Right.
So it's
Right.
just stepping forward and back on sideline.
Okay, and there's the same thing. Somebody's stuck in middle propulsion. You just put them there, and you start with like smaller movements, and over
Yeah,
time
it's
make
just
them like bigger
all we're
movements.
talking about is that early rolling strategy that we were talking about before in the early part of the call, right? Where you put them on their side, like I think it was Zach's question, where we were talking about the rolling activity and such. It's like you put them on their side and you start to do the smaller arc of rolling back and forth, right? That would be kind of the same thing that you're talking about. So if you're not a manual person, you can use that activity as your starter activity to initiate the rolling activities.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.